In March and April 2019, southern Africa was hit by two consecutive cyclones, Idai and Kenneth. Together, they left an estimated 3 million people in Mozambique, Malawi and Zimbabwe in need of urgent humanitarian assistance. An independent evaluation captured the main strengths and weaknesses of UNHCR's response. An Level-3 emergency response was triggered, and UNHCR responded. Together, we worked with partners to deliver core relief items and protection assistance, established protection coordination mechanisms, profiled IDPs, supported implementing partners in the areas of child protection and protection against sexual exploitation and abuse, prioritized hard-to-reach communities and persons with special needs, and mobilized technical expertise across multiple sectors. The evaluation commended the professionalism and commitment of UNHCR staff on the ground and their achievements in putting protection at the center of the humanitarian response. UNHCR's work contributed significantly to alleviating the suffering of the affected populations.
The decision to respond was in itself an achievement, because these were not the classical refugee and internal displacement operations. The second element at the strategic level was the fact that UNHCR adopted a regional approach, which was also ambitious, but which was coherent with the complexities and the scale and the magnitude of the disaster. And this regional approach allowed not only to respond to internal displacement, but also to cross-border displacement. And this is an aspect where UNHCR made a difference in comparison with other humanitarian organizations. UNHCR decided to expand its operational presence for 1 year in Mozambique, which was coherent with the needs on the ground and also with cluster engagement in terms of supporting the recovery phase. So very briefly, these were the positive aspects at the strategic and operational level of the response to Idai and Kenneth.
Cyclones Idai and Kenneth represented the perfect storm for UNHCR, revealing a critical policy implementation gap concerning its engagement in climate change and disaster-related displacement in non-conflict situations. The organization was not able to fully implement its own policies concerning emergency and IDP responses, nor follow the internal guidance documents and international orientations on climate change, disasters, or risk reduction. While UNHCR responded to Idai, we then failed to respond to Kenneth.
At the time of Cyclone Idai, but also Cyclone Kenneth, which happened 3 weeks later, and yet even today, there's a disconnect between our policies at UNHCR about how to respond, how to prepare and respond to population displacement in situations of disaster. I'll mention 3 or 4 different policies which I think are important just to show that inconsistency. The emergency policy asks UNHCR to contribute to the interagency response if there is a disaster. Whereas the policy on IDPs says that there are 3 criteria that need to be met. Then finally, we have the Climate Action Strategic Framework, which asks us to do preparedness for situations of possible disasters. These policies taken together have a lot of inconsistencies between them and leave colleagues and offices unsure of how to prepare. There's still some way to go to have the same understanding and a common vision that is shared among the offices and the bureaus about what we should do if there is a population displacement because of disasters.
Idai and Kenneth revealed the challenges for small country operations in switching from regular and development-orientated programming to emergency responses. The scale of the challenge presented by both climate change and displacement cannot be overestimated. They deserve robust analysis if UNHCR is to balance its policies and ambitions in these areas.
Cyclone Idai overwhelmed the capacity of the small country offices in the region to respond. Therefore, the Southern Africa Bureau, our priority currently is to support in-country emergency training and preparedness, which GLDC and DES are supporting us with. The situation emergency training brings together primarily national staff, government representatives, and NGOs, so there is an agreed understanding of how to respond across all sectors.
The lead on protection is non-negotiable. This is really our comparative advantage. The advice I can give to operations is to focus on our strengths, which are community-based protection approach with solid protection analysis, contributing to the government, the partners, and the UN country team. There truly is no one better to do this than UNHCR. And it is here that we must step up, including in disaster-related internal displacement. Another area for strengthening our engagement is related to resource mobilization, including with the local and the national private sector actors. Opportunities for innovative financing are growing, and these can be optimized.
UNHCR has reflected deeply on this experience and agreed that it needs to be a more effective and predictable partner when it comes to natural disaster responses.
We are a leader, humanitarian leader. We have specific responsibility in protection of internally displaced persons, and often this is one of the consequences of such crises. So one concrete thing that we are doing, the emergency policy will be revised in 2022, and it will help clarify the criteria for intervention to ensure that there is greater predictability and reliability. Another thing that we are doing now, we are very active in climate action. Each of the 7 regions, taking of course into account early warning mechanisms, people know or have indication that there is a risk. So to basically map all of these around the world and make sure that we participate with other UN agencies in preparedness, so that when the response comes or when the situation occurs, we're in a position of playing our role. Another thing is about partnership. Our senior advisor on climate action has been very active. Our division of emergency and security and supply is also very much engaged at the technical level. The last is about staff training in disaster response. And they need to develop a consistent narrative to support fundraising as well as communication, for people to understand why we need to act in this kind of context and this kind of environment. So lots of prevention, not last minute action, but to be there when people are mapping risks, when people and agencies, UN agencies, government, various actors, when they are there present to map risk, that we engage at that level, that we engage in preparation. So these are, in a few words, the kind of things that we're planning to do, very much as a result of this evaluation.
The challenge of climate change is everyone's business. All UN agencies need to mainstream prevention, preparedness, and response into their global, regional, and national strategies.
I welcome the recommendations which are contained in the evaluation report, because it's raised the profile for the need for the organisation to be fit for the future. Unfortunately, the events are almost overtaking our capacity, but that does not give us any reason not to step up. We know that the science is telling us that the world weather events are going to become more dramatic, and our populations on the front lines of the climate emergency are going to be made more vulnerable. So now is not the time for reticence or reaction. We have to be more proactive. We have to trust science. We have to be much more collaborative. And we have to support preparedness with our partners, with our stakeholders, with the governments, with the communities on the ground, so that there is a real difference to people on the front lines of the climate emergency.
The number of climate-related disasters are likely to increase in the years to come. What can we do to prepare ourselves to better protect those in greatest need of protection? Starting today.